Hi, I'm Rick and Rick Turns, and today in this video and in a subsequent video I'm going to be making a new knockout bar for my wood turning lathe. Now this is the one I've had for years. It's a really simple tool and it works really well. It's got a bar here and it's got a handle here, but it can be a lot better. And what I'm going to be making is this. This has got a nice, very pretty wooden handle on it, made from water oak and walnut. It's weighted, quite a bit of heavy weight in it. And the bar right here moves back and forth. So when you're going to knock out a drive center, you pull the handle back and you slam it forward. You've got the weight and you've got the momentum working to drive that drive center out. On this end right here where we contact the drive center is a piece of brass which will not do any deforming of the steel at the end of the drive center. So let's go over to the workbench and we'll get started. Now let's talk about knockout bars. This is a knockout bar that I got with my Jet 1442 lathe some 10 years ago. It's pretty darn simple. 3/8 inch rod here, little handle on the end. Slip it into the opening in the hand wheel on the headstock. Whack it with your wrist once, twice, 4 or 5 times until the drive center pops out and usually falls on the floor. So, very simple. How can you improve on that? Not by that, that's the same thing. I lost the knockout bar that came with my MIDI lathe, so I just took a piece of 3/8 inch rod, put a little handle, glued it on the end, and that works absolutely as good as this one does. Is there any room for improvement there? Well, actually, Powermatic showed us that there is. Now, this came with my new Powermatic lathe that I just recently got, and it's pretty spiffy. It's got a rod that moves back and forth, and although I can't show it in the video, it's pretty darn heavy here. So you've got a lot of weight right here. You've got a movable rod so that you pull it back, you push it this way. When this contacts, you've got more of a push that way with less stress on your hands. So really pretty simple, again, but it's a real improvement. It's really nice to do that. So I decided I'm going to make one of these, not for my Powermatic, which has a beautiful one right here, but for that Jet 1442 lathe. So what I came up with was this. And this is just very, very similar to how the Powermatic is made. And what I'm going to be making for this video is this one here. It's essentially the same as this, but I've changed a few things on it. I just wanted to make different wood here to make it look nicer. And the only other thing I changed was the brass tip. Now, if you look at this one from Powermatic, man, they put a brass tip on there. Really cool. I wanted to do that too. With this one, my brass tip is a toilet hold-down bolt. Pretty classy, huh? And I drilled and tapped this rod for it. That works. And it works pretty well. But for this one, I figured, well, it's got to be an easier way than having a drill and tap. So I went to Home Depot and looked around their plumbing aisle and found this. This is called a flare knot, 1/4 FL. I suppose the FL stands for flare. And I put that on my lathe and I turned off the nut edges here. We've got 3 pieces of wood turning to do. And we've got 1 length of rod to cut. And a little piece of brass on there to tinker around with. What's not showing in there, there's also a short length of steel rod, only 3 inches, not nearly this long. 1 inch steel rod that rides inside the handle. So let's take a closer look at this. So here we've got the handle. Incidentally, this is not the scale. That's this piece right here, the light colored wood, which is water oak. We've got an end cap on each end of the handle. This one is solid. This one over here is almost solid. but it's got a hole through it right there, which is a little bit larger than the 3/8 inch rod. Other than that, of course, it is solid. This piece is not solid. It's got a large hole in it, and that hole is 1 1/4 inches. Actually, it's a little bit larger than 1 1/4 inches. And the reason for that is to get a nice smooth movement of steel rod like this, I wanted to encase it in a metal sleeve. And that metal sleeve happens to be a piece of plumbing pipe. It's a 1 inch by 5 inch black pipe nipple, it's called. And they come in all sizes, 3 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, and so forth. Just a short length of pipe. It's got threading on each end, which I didn't really need. Plain piece of pipe would have been fine, but the nipple was about the cheapest thing I could find. It's just fine with me. So we've got a piece of wood here, right here, gets hollowed out. Piece of wood here that's solid, same diameter here. Piece of wood here that's almost solid, same diameter as this one. There are the end caps. The other piece that we have is the rod. It's going to go like this. And the rod is going to have something that I hope is going to look better than that. The rod's going to have a little bit of a brass cap on it. And the reason for that is the steel rod, being steel, is going to have a tendency when it slams up against your drive center to push on that metal some, and there is a small possibility that it could flare the drive center out, screwing up the Morse taper and making it difficult to get out. I've never had that actually happen, but that's a theory anyway. And it certainly doesn't hurt to put a piece of brass on here. The other piece we need, as I mentioned, is a piece of 3 inch long, 1 inch diameter steel rod. This piece gets set into that 1 inch diameter. So it's going to go right here on the end of the rod, just like this. And it's going to have a hole drilled this depth here. So I made that hole 1 1/2 inches deep. The 3/8 inch ramrod fits into here, 3/8 inch hole, goes in 1 1/2 inches. This piece is about an inch, about a 1/2 inch long, something like that. This piece right here, there's several things you need to take into account when sizing it. The distance between the outer side of your hand wheel on the headstock and the outer side of the drive quill on the headstock. That is the left side, the hand wheel, the right side, where the drive center goes in. On my lathe, this is, I think, is about 15 inches. So, now when you put a drive center into the head of the lathe, it goes in about 2 to 2.5 inches, depending on the particular drive center you're using. So this length here, you don't actually want it to go the whole 15 inches. You want it to go a little bit less than that, maybe 2 inches less than that. So to figure out all this, you take your 1.5 inches here, you add in 15, you add in 1/2, you subtract out 2 inches for the depth of the drive center, and then you don't want this piece slamming right up against the handle, so you add another 2 inches there. Good. But the purpose of having this 3-inch piece going into this 5-inch piece, essentially 5.5 inch piece, is so that it can ride back and forth. That gives you a little bit of a travel there, just like that. So when you start to ram out a drive center, you pull this back and you slam it forward. That gives you more force on the drive center with less effort on your hand. So now we've got a little bit more distance in here that we need to add into the rod, which is 2 inches. So you come up with all that, say 15 plus 1/2 plus 1.5 plus 2 plus 2. Plus we want some clearance between here and the hand wheel when we actually hit it, so that's another inch. Man, that is way too much trouble. So what we're going to do to size that piece is, after the rod is put onto the handle, then we're going to go to the lathe, we're going to push it in there, we're going to put it in a drive center, and we're going to figure out how long the rod needs to be, cut it there, and then glue on a piece of brass like that. All right. The other dimensions for this, they're not critical, of course, but you may have to adjust something if you change it. This is 5.5 inches here. Now I want 5 inches for the pipe nipple to go into, and I want a little clearance on both sides, 1/4 inch clearance, so that's how I got 5.5 inches for this piece right here. These on both sides I'm making 3/4 of an inch thick. Since you do have some slamming force coming against it, and you do like that, I didn't want it to be too thin, so 3/4 of an inch is fine. The distance here to here, well, the internal hole is 1 1/4. Actually, it's a little bit more than that, because the outer diameter of that black pipe nipple is a little larger than 1 1/4. So I made this dimension here roughly 2 inches. That's what I started with. It ended up being maybe a 1/16 less than that. That's fine. But if you take 2 inches and you take away 1 1/4 inches, you're left with 3/4, which is 3/8 inch wood on both sides of the hole there. And that's enough to be strong. 1/4 inch would be enough to be strong as well. So that's how I came up with 2 inches for the diameter of it. It's a little bit large, but it's not bad for a hand grip. So to start off with, I'm going to take a length of water oak there, about 7 inches, and cut this part. And then I will take some walnut that I have and chuck up about 4 inches and cut these 2 end caps. And on the last end cap that I cut and turn, I will also drill a hole in there of 7/16 of an inch. All right, let's get to work. I've got a 7-inch piece of water oak here. This is going to be the handle, the ram handle for the knockout bar. Now, if you recall from our drawing, what I need there is a 5.5 inch column. It's going to be hollowed all the way through. So I'm going to start with the 7 inches. That'll give me enough room for a 1 inch mount with a 1/2 inch to spare to clean up the edge and so forth. So the first thing I'm going to do is rough it down. I'm just going to switch over to a skew chisel to make the final outside cuts here. All right, now we're mounted on the chuck. With the tailstock brought up, although I'll be removing it shortly. So I'm going to take a couple of passes down here to retrue it. Lathe is at about 1600. I'm going to even up this edge down here. It's going to be a glue joint here, so I want it to be nice and flat, at least the outermost 1/4 inch circumference. At this point, I think we're ready to drill. Now, as you recall, we're going to be putting this inside this tube of wood. Once we get it all cut, it's going to go right inside there. This, at its widest point, is about a 1/16 over a 1 1/4. I've got a 1 1/4 inch Forstner bit. I've got a 1 3/8 inch Forstner bit. I don't have 1 5/16. That's a little bit over it anyway. So, ready to start drilling. I'll go in 2.5 inches there. Then I'll probably extend the bit. I can get about another 1/2 inch of it. and then I'll have to switch to a longer spade bit. All right, let's get going. Lay that 400. And it's going to go slow. Well, it's actually cutting faster than I expected that it would. And really noisy, backing it out. All right, got a little bit more. I can get more before I have to reposition the drill bit. Now, I'm going to pull the drill bit out just a little bit. I want it as much as possible inside the chuck for the initial drilling. And now I want as much as possible outside the chuck to get a little more depth. We set it to 0 point. I probably got maybe another ½ an inch or so. One reason I back it out frequently is I've had problems before with the Forstner chuck getting stuck. It'll build up a lot of shavings behind it, and then I can't get it out. And that is it. I think I got about 3 inches there. And let's check that depth. Ooh, not bad. Got 3 1/4 inches. I need to go down to, or through actually, 5 1/2, which is right there. That's as far as I'm going to go today, constructing this knockout bar. Join me in my second video on this and see how we finish it up. Put in the link right here in the video. You'll also find it in the notes below the video. All right, see you next time.